Welcome to Stack of Stats. I am your host, Pamela Maldonado, bringing you all the analytics behind the ATP Wimbledon bets, because that's what's going on. Today, I do have a two-part series chatting first with Gill Gross of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network and host of the Monday Match Analysis. He will be joining me to break down Roger Federer, see what lies for his future, what is in store for one of the greatest players of all time. Is retirement on the horizon? I'll get some perspective from him. And then Drew Dinsick, he'll be joining me, Whale Capper on Twitter. He's going to join me to break down some of the semifinals of the men's Wimbledon draw and maybe even talk some WTA predictions. But first up, I do have Gill. Gill, thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate you taking the time. Any surprises for you coming out of Wimbledon up until now?
Thanks for having me, Pamela. Well, I guess Hubie Hurkacz making the semifinal after going on, I believe it was a 6-match losing streak, was a bit of a surprise. Although he does have a good game for grass, and I think people knew that, but just kind of wrote him off because of his form coming in. That's a surprise. And then I feel like Shapovalov, another first-time semifinalist, but you kind of knew that quarter was wide open. So
Right.
not a total shock. Someone predicted that. So I don't know.
I think I was one of those people. I thought
There we go.
Shapovalov would
We
be the
both
one.
got it.
He would be the
There we
one that
go.
would get on through. I thought Agut may have given a little bit more of a fight in his part of the draw, but I thought Shapovalov, he's the best player out of that quarter, and then here he comes. So it's no surprise to either one of us. But I do want to talk instead a little bit about Roger Federer, 20-time Grand Slam winner, 8-time Wimbledon winner, out in the quarterfinal, as you just mentioned, losing to Poland's Hubert Hurkacz, Hubie, in straight sets. I cannot say that I was entirely shocked. I actually did think I liked, from a betting perspective, I liked Hurkacz taking the plus 2.5 sets. I liked him at plus 1.5 sets, and I just couldn't find it in me to take the money line. There are some matches where I just want to watch as a fan, and others that I feel comfortable laying money on, and I couldn't do it. I could not lay money against Roger Federer because I was hoping, secretly, not so secretly, wishing that he would come on through. But I know that there were a few of us who did expect this. I'm not sure if you did, but the last time that Federer lost in straight sets at Wimbledon was in 2002. The last time the Federer lost 6-0 at Wimbledon in a set, never. It was Hubert Hurkacz. He was the first player to ever bagel Federer in London. What do you think happened in that match?
I mean, it all comes down to movement with Roger's game. And if the feet aren't working, nothing's really going to work. It's pretty much true for any tennis player. I thought his serve looked underpowered and kind of has looked underpowered really for the entirety of 2021 since coming back from the knee surgery. So that was a pattern. You saw his aces were lower. His serve speeds were a tad lower. But in the previous 2 rounds against Norrie and Sonego, even though he wasn't serving aces, he was serving unreturnables. He was getting service winners. So it kind of flew under the radar, at least for me as an analyst, that I kind of said, okay, ace count is low, serve still working well enough. But, Hurkacz proved to be just a step up in returning, and the serve wasn't working. The forehand wasn't good. The net coverage, the way he was moving at the net looked belabored. And then the decision-making was just kind of off, letting a ball go over his head in the first set that ended up landing in. He could have volleyed it. He let it go. He gets broken in that game. And then in the tie break, a couple of decisions he made from winning decisions in the second set tie break, like a passing shot from point blank that he just massaged down the line instead of just hammering at Hurkacz. A couple of those things that he just got wrong in his head. And it was all just resulted in a really straightforward win for Hurkacz, who's been playing great.
You're talking about Federer's decision making and how Federer had let that ball go overhead. The commentators, it's almost as if they were trying to help him with an excuse of, oh, well, maybe it was the wind. I think it was just he misjudged it entirely, and it's some of that decision making. Maybe it's some of that confidence that was lost. This wasn't the first match that we have seen him lose his confidence. It has actually been almost all of 2021 where he looks fantastic, as he did against Cam Norrie, against Sonego, but then he just all of a sudden falters under. And you're kind of also wondering, okay, well, maybe he's somebody like Nadal. We saw him blip. Well, now we're seeing Federer blip. Just something mentally. They were the strongest players, mental mindsets in the game. That's why they're number one, number two, number three in all of tennis. And then all of a sudden, we're starting to see them break a little. They're starting to bend and now they're starting to break. After that match, we did see Federer just entirely jet off the court. I do think that if we were near the end of his career, then potentially Federer would have hung around. Maybe he would have given some type of speech. We would have set kind of the demeanor that he would have had would have been a little bit more somber. But instead, he walked immediately out. He grabbed his bag and he took off. To me, that says that he's going to be back, that this isn't over yet. And you yourself, you did tweet that you see very little reason to believe that we won't see Federer at Wimbledon again. But however, he then said in a conference interview that on playing again, I don't know. I really don't know. So, of course, I'm paraphrasing here. He needed to talk with his team. He needed to see what worked in this match, in this tournament, what didn't. He wanted to take a few days to really just kind of lay everything out on the table. He didn't want to feel pressure to decide anything, and that he wasn't. That he was actually pretty happy with the way that he played. He was happy with his movement. He was happy with his skill set. Do you feel the same now, seeing him play again, or did the interview change your mind?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think he's gonna say I don't know because I think he respects the unknown and the prospect that, if there could be another injury, for example. So,
Hmm.
if he said, see ya in 2022, Wimbledon, you're basically discounting the idea that something could go, God forbid, very wrong. And
Right.
it could, you just can't at that age. I think he's taking nothing for granted, but I also just don't envision, and that's a good observation, and I agree with you about how he acted after the match. There's just very little indication that Federer is in a dark and hopeless enough place that he is going to, consider calling it a career at this point. A
Right.
tennis player's confidence is in terms of a long-term confidence or a tennis player's belief, I'm going to say. In
Hmm.
some ways, it's very fickle. Like we talked about how it was kind of gone against Hurkacz in the match. But in other ways, it's very dynamite. And it's going to take a lot to convince Roger Federer that he
Hmm.
doesn't have it anymore, way more than losing to Hurkacz in the quarterfinal of Wimbledon.
Right. What I did like about his interview, though, was that he did say that even a year after injury, that he himself didn't feel like he had any setbacks. That he's still kind of trucking along. He's doing well. He's doing his thing, but that things were clearly missing from his game. So that's why I have you here, because I want to know, what do you see that is missing from your game? I really do love your match analysis that you have on YouTube. I learned from them myself. I really want your perspective on Federer's return from injury. Looking at 2021, he's 9-4. People are over here freaking out that Roger Federer is washed up, will go into retirement. He's 9-4. He's actually played some really great players. Some of the players that he has defeated, he beat Dan Evans, Marin Cilic, Dominic Kofer, which was a fantastic, one of the best matches that I've seen from him over the last few years. You have Ilya Vashka, and then just a great group of players that he defeated at Wimbledon. He took Adrian Monterino, which we almost saw him lose out in the first round, which he's never done before. Richard Gasquet, Cam Norrie, and then of course Lorenzo Sonego. Some of the players that he's lost to: Basilashvili, Pablo Andujar. He withdrew before we ever got to watch him play against Berrettini, and then he lost to Felix Auger-Aliassime, and then of course Hubi. But what are some of your thoughts on Federer? What are some of the things in 2021 that he has done well?
Sure. Well, first of all, he's had some tough unseeded players that he's had to face. It's especially with how they performed afterwards, with Basilashvili going on to win
Hmm.
Doha, and then Andujar making a real run in Geneva, and
Hmm.
even Ivashka is on a tear. So he beat him, but it was close, and people were like, "Why is it so close?" And then turns out Ivashka's doing great. So that's been interesting. What is he doing well? I guess the repertoire that he brings to the court and some of the genius of how he moves the ball around the court and the wide array of shots that he brings to the game, kind of the thing that people I think are so kind of allured by when it comes to watching him play. that is still all there. And there are magical
Mm-hmm.
moments where Federer is pulling off shots that you rarely see anyone else attempt. Forget making it, just attempting it.
The
And
down the line backhands, they're so such
mhm,
when it clicks, it is beautiful, and it's old school Federer that we used to see. So like you said, it's moments of magic. It's just not
right,
consistent right now.
exactly. I think there have been matches where his movement has been good. And that's again, like that's really what brings everything together.
Right.
And that's the real concern coming off a knee surgery is your movement never going to be the same. So the key, what has he done well is, well, it seems like he can still be a decent mover on the tour, not what he used to be, but there have been matches where he's flying around the court and looking good. That's the most
Mm-hmm.
important thing.
Right. And then I agree with that as well because you're seeing him come up into the net when somebody is drop shotting him. He's able to get to the ball. He doesn't really look tired afterward. So his ability, his movement is still there. He's about to be 40. However, I'm going to say what he hasn't done well is his timing. His timing is off, and that just takes, I believe, some just like more reps. How much more reps does he need? I'm not entirely sure, but looking at what's missing from his game, he says that something is missing. I'm saying that it's timing. What do you think?
I don't think the serve has done him any favors in his losses. If you
Right.
isolate, okay, you lose to, even if I go back to Basilashvili was the first time, he's a guy who takes massive cuts on the return, basically tries to take control of the point right off the return. He was doing it successfully. But that
Mhm.
was a long time ago. The knee wasn't right. Even if we fast forward, Marin Cilic at the French Open, similar kind of player. Federer beats him, but it gets very difficult with how well Cilic in that, I believe it was the second set, was almost
Mhm.
bullying the serve. And then here, Hurkacz, he's punishing the Federer serve in a way that Federer's serve should be the bully, not the
Right.
bullied. And that's a big problem for Roger, especially the 2.0 or 3.0 version of Roger at 39 years old, where he needs to keep the points short. He needs to be in
Mhm.
control of the points. So if the serve isn't working, it's really going to be an uphill battle, especially against the kind of the top 20 level players. That's the main thing I'd pinpoint in terms of the timing. I think it's a consistency thing. It's been in and out and in and out, and that's not great either.
Right. And I agree with that as well. I mean, I like you everything you said about the serve, that's exactly right. And we've seen it with other players with Nadal. When he has lost on clay, it was because his serve was off. He would have a few double faults. With Nick Kyrgios, who hasn't also played that much, he said it himself. I don't have my serve. I can't continue in this match against Felix because all I have is my serve, and now I'm unable to serve because of my injury. Well, then what am I going to be playing here for? It all starts with that. It's the first shot of the match of any game, any point. And yeah, if you lose that, then you're probably going to lose the rest of your game. But Wimbledon is now over. So do we see Federer play in Tokyo Olympics?
It's going to be so interesting. My gut is no. I don't think it's an attractive move for a ton of tennis players. It doesn't matter.
Hmm.
You're 39, you have a family, you're
Hmm.
trying to take care of your body and you're training and prepare. That's Federer's circumstance. You see players who are young,
Young.
don't have families, and they're skipping the Olympics. So
Right.
if I were to guess, no. And I mean, I just don't. I think he really needs to focus on continuing to build up his body and to work on his game and to continue to enjoy the game, because that's really when you know that he will be done, is if he's on the court and he's dreading it because he's suffering with his level to that extent. And I don't think we're there yet. I think he's really enjoying the process of trying to get better and trying to get to the level that he wants to.
No, and I agree with that as well, which means we could see him instead of the Tokyo Olympics. We could see him at the US Open. He does have five
Mhm.
US Open titles. However, the last time that he won in New York was in 2008, where he won. That was the fifth year that he won straight. he hasn't been doing well in the last years. 2019, he lost in the quarterfinal to Grigor Dimitrov in five. 2018, he lost in the round of 16 to John Millman in four. 2017, he lost to Juan Martin del Potro, which I hope we also see really back soon in the quarterfinal in four. So his last good run was a loss to Djokovic in the final in four sets. He doesn't excel at the US Open. So when do you think that we're going to see Federer next if he does decide to continue?
Maybe he'll play in DC and we'll find and he'll take on Nadal for the City Open title. No, I'm just joking. Um, if I, the interesting decision for him over the summer, I think, is going to be: do you play Canada and Cincinnati, or do you choose one? And that'll tell us a lot, I think. Then that'll be an interesting decision for Federer. Of course, we expect to see him at the U.S. Open. It is not, as you've outlined, it's been a struggle for him there. I think
Mhm.
the court is a lot slower than Australia. The fact that it's been at the end of the calendar year means that sometimes he's shown up to New York banged up. The humidity and the heat, especially in Arthur Ashe, once they put in the roof, that's been really difficult for him, because it's been, in a match like Millman, the conditions were just brutal for him. All of these things have kind of made it a difficult place for him to win. But I'd be interested to see, well, what can a well-rested Federer do at US Open, at the US Open? I think at this point, the draws need to be good. The
Yeah.
weather needs to be right. Things need to go a certain way to give Federer a chance. It's hard to see him making a run if a lot of things are working against him.
One thing that a lot of people are making the argument of is that Federer, even if he does continue, yes, he's going to win matches, but it doesn't mean that he's going to win tournaments. Do you think if he continues on that there is a win of a tournament in the future?
I think I don't think he's won his last title, if I were to guess. I think he's got some titles in him. It's just, what are the magnitude of those titles? And in terms of winning a major, the one thing I will say is, it doesn't it's not far-fetched to me that he can be better in 2022 than he was in 2021. And I
Mhm.
know the age makes that sound like a crazy thing, but if you look at the circumstances of being out with a knee surgery for literally a year and a half, like a crazy recovery time, it would make sense that, okay, first, I'd say first quarter, if we're going to talk like business people, first quarter back is not going to be your best quarter. You
Right.
you should you should have a better time as you start to build up some momentum. At a certain point, yes, it will be a permanent downhill. But I'm not convinced that that permanent downhill is right now. I think right now it's still uphill for Federer coming back
Right.
from the surgery. So that's the positive, I think, for Rogers' outlook.
Mhm. And I think it has a lot to do with exactly what you were outlining earlier, which is he needs to make the adjustments of ending these points quick. He needs to avoid the wear and tear on his body on the courts, put less miles, come in, serve volley into the net, drop shot, do what you got to do to finish the point quick. Because these players, we have seen a transition since the pandemic. These players, they are all getting really good. And it's like, it's no longer, there's a reason why we're no longer seeing Nadal, Federer, and Djokovic just absolutely dominate because everybody else, they are still at peak, but everybody else is starting to kind of catch up a little bit. So now he's having to make the adjustments. The good thing about the guys who are in the top three is that they have the ability to make the adjustments. They know the adjustments that they have to make, and then they actually have the ability to go out and execute. So Federer is definitely one of those players that can go ahead and do that, of course. So I'm just really looking forward to, I hope that we continue seeing him. Fanship aside, what do you wish to see for Federer?
What do I wish? Good question. I hope that we get just a fulfilling end to his tennis career. I hope it's not an injury. And that's kind of
Yeah.
I hope it's not an injury, and I hope it's not too bad in terms of how he goes out. I hope he goes out in good spirits and not a broken tennis player. Which
Yeah.
you know that's kind of I think he'll be able to do that. I'm hopeful that Federer can go out on his own terms. I think he hopes to do that too. Ultimately, like skills don't vanish.
Right.
Bodies betray, right? He's going to
Yeah.
be a little slower. He might be more inconsistent, but he is going to be the more talented player than the person on the other side of the net in,
Hmm.
still in 99% of his matches. So I
Yeah.
really think that his abilities will carry him to a good final couple years on tour or final year on tour. Who knows?
So what you're saying is don't overreact to him losing to a very fantastic, great player whose skill set matches that of grass court tennis, and instead just sit back, let him develop because that's what's going to happen. He's going to get back into form. You have to climb that mountain again. You don't just like go straight to the peak, and that's what's happening with
Right.
Federer. So
There should still be hope that Federer is going to be better in 6 months' time. If he's the same,
then we
that's
can worry.
right, exactly. And we've seen what that's going to look like. He can still
Hmm.
beat some players, but
Right.
he's going to hit a wall at the end of tournaments when the competition gets great. Which, by the way, it's not the craziest, most awful thing in the world. He was one of the
Exactly.
last 8 players left at Wimbledon.
Exactly. He's continuously getting deeper into tournaments, and people are shocked that he lost in the quarterfinals instead of saying it at, hey, he made it to the quarterfinals
Right.
comfortably. I mean, I would say after Monterino, it was a pretty comfortable route after. I do want to get your opinion on tomorrow's matches, though, if we are talking about Hubert Hurkacz. What do you think about the semifinals for tomorrow between Hubert Hurkacz and Berrettini?
I really like Hurkacz, who
Yeah.
I know he is a betting underdog there, but I like his chances a lot, just because of the way the number of returns that I expect
Hmm.
him to make and just how much better. I think we saw Felix start to do that. I think Hurkacz is even a better returner than Felix.
Right.
If you can just make those returns and get into rallies with Berrettini, Hurkacz will be the steadier, more consistent player. I love the way he's putting pressure on his opponents by taking time away, hitting high percentage approach shots, and getting to the net. And Hurkacz can match Berrettini with the serve. So I think it'll come down to two things: who can play less loose service games, and who can win those key return points in
Yeah.
tie breaks. And I like Hurkacz to do that better than Berrettini.
His demeanor has been really great. When you saw him against Federer, the moment never got too big for him. He just kept on riding along as if it was just another match. So I really do
Mhm.
like that mental aspect that he is able to bring into the match as well. But I do definitely thank you for joining me to talk a little bit about tennis. I'm Roger Federer. You have given me some hope and something to look forward to because I'm hoping to get tickets for the U.S. Open. So maybe instead I'll be looking at getting tickets for round 1 and 2, and maybe avoid getting the quarterfinals or later. Where can you tell us the folks where they can find your work?
Sure. The podcast is called Monday Match Analysis, and also another one called Three, a tennis show, which focuses solely on Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic. On YouTube, the channel is called Gill Gross, Gill with 2 L's. And all the Monday Match Analysis stuff also goes up on that YouTube channel. And if you come to the U.S. Open, make sure you let me know because I'll be there as well.
Wonderful. Do make sure you do follow Gill on Twitter at Gill_Gross. And thank you for joining me for this. I really have really loved the insights you're able to provide. So we'll chat soon.
Thanks, Pamela. This was fun.